I think our old way of thinking was like make a list of all the things that are broken, and when it's time to fix stuff, we'll go fix all that stuff. And
Hmm.
instead having the mindset of, hey, what can we fix now?
Yeah.
Even in just processes, right? Like
Hmm.
nothing to do with software, but just how can we make a process better?
Welcome to the Operate Podcast, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look at company building from the perspective of the builders themselves. This is how we operate.
Welcome to the Operate Podcast. I'm Kerry Ransom. Today's episode is sponsored by BankTech Ventures, the first strategic investment fund designed by the community banking industry for community bank innovation and investment. BankTech identifies leading products and technologies for community banks and works with the founders and management teams of those companies to maximize the impact they can have in community banks and for their respective businesses. If you're a bank looking to innovate and invest in the future, or a founder who wants to work with community banks, reach out to BankTech Ventures at banktechventures.com. My guest today is Heath Fountain, who became president and CEO of Colony Bank about 5 years ago. He's actively led the bank in a number of areas of innovation and digital transformation, which we'll discuss today. Prior to that, he led Planters First Bank and drove growth there through both new markets and new lines of business. And then prior to that, he was also CFO of Heritage Financial Group and Heritage Bank of the South. Heath has been a banker for quite a while, and I'm excited to record this conversation with him, as I always enjoy the ones that we have. Heath, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's start. The banking landscape has clearly gone through some interesting times already this year. So let's start with what I'll call your thoughts on the current state of community banking and Colony Bank as well, which is the largest community bank in Georgia. How are you feeling about community banking right now?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty right now in the economy and with the rate environment we have. But I think this turmoil we've seen, the real concern over liquidity that's happening as a big opportunity, really, for us at Colony, for the community banking industry. I certainly think things are going to change, and they're going to be a little bit different. There's going to be some different things we have to track, monitor, and measure, especially around liquidity and funding. But I think, the community bank industry in general has had such a solid core, stable funding base. I think the value of that's really being seen right now, and the opportunity, during uncertain times to have that steady funding base really gives or allows banks, community banks, to have a lot of opportunity.
Most banks have this multi-year strategic planning process that they go through, right? And partly, I think, to what you were just saying, this historically stable and predictable business. With what's happened over the last few months, have you made any changes to your strategic plan this year?
We do a 5-year strategic plan, and we roll that every year. So at any given time, we have a 5-year strategic plan out there. But then we have operating priorities, throughout the year,
Mm-hmm.
and then throughout the quarter. And we have shifted those. I mean, I think generally we may get back to, or we will get back to, some of the core long-term things we want to do, like grow 8 to 12% a year. That's one of our things we want to always do. But like in this environment, we're certainly seeing our customers pull back some.
Mm.
And I think for us as a bank, our loan to deposit ratios in the 70s. We were looking, or in the low 70s. We were looking to move it up to 80-85% over a few years. And now I'm thinking that's not going to happen as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly want to be more cognizant of being able to align our growth of deposits and loans more evenly. I think in the near term, at least, until we kind of see where the liquidity in the industry is going. So that would be the biggest thing. I mean, we certainly are also just more actively seeking deposits,
Mm-hmm.
just from a stability standpoint and just from a standpoint of ensuring that we keep that funding base in place.
Sure. Well, that's a good transition. I mean, we've recently had our annual Bank Tech Ventures Summit, and with nearly 100 banks there, and talking about things like fintech and digitalization, and we were even talking about this competitive deposit environment. And as I think one of the bankers there said, it's probably the most competitive environment we've seen since probably the 1980s. So for some younger bankers, probably the first time or most competitive environment they've seen in their career. But it is an opportunity for community banks who want to go compete. How are you feeling about that? Like, what are you doing to be unique and different? And obviously you guys have been, and we'll talk more about this, but you guys have been a early and aggressive adopter of new ideas, new technology. Are you using that to help you as well?
Yeah, I probably feel better about our ability to compete than I have in a long time, and I'd say that for Colony Bank, but I also think for the community banking industry, because the adoption time to take something and put it in place, is quicker. The options, there are other options out there now besides let me get with my core vendor and see what they can do and what they can roll out in 18 months or whatever. It takes so long. So the fintech ecosystem, I think, allows us to compete, to have better products and services that are more comparable, maybe to what more comparable to the bigger banks than what we've been able to offer in the past. As far as for us in particular, we've been building an infrastructure to do that. And so we're not quite there and able to turn as many new things, but we're on the cusp of that. And I couldn't think of a better time, because I do think this has opened up people's eyes to how fast money can move. I mean, even for me, I didn't realize that there's this U.S. Treasury Direct program as a consumer. I went up and signed up in 5 minutes, and you can, buy T-bills right out of your checking account. And so, and the Apple savings account or Goldman Sachs, but we can do those kind of things as community banks. We can have niche products and things like that are easy too. And so I think people's eyes are opening to that, and I'm hopeful. I think we're further along than many, and so we're going to be able to roll out these innovative and easy products. But I think the industry's eyes have been opened a little bit to say, hey, we've got to do something. There's easier ways to do business than maybe with my bank, the way I'm set up.
Well, so many really interesting comments there, Heath. So I'm going to pepper you maybe with a few quick follow-up questions here. So
yeah,
first one, you talk about this idea of quicker adoption time, which I totally agree with. There's been so much software and so much technology built just the last decade. The cost of it to develop it, the cost to use it, roll it out, all this just continues to shrink by the day. I'm curious, because I don't think that perspective is broadly shared amongst your peers, that this quicker adoption time, I think people still plan for these 12-month or multi-month type of projects. What got you to see that you can do these things much faster? So let's start there.
Yeah, no, I mean, one thing I think is just educating ourselves. I mean, talking to folks, and I think one good thing y'all done with the Bank Tech Ventures, been able to meet some more innovative banks that are doing things more quickly. And I think one of the things I've realized is that, we can roll things out in pieces, the days of the long implementation. And even in those long implementations, you can't think of everything. And so you're still going back and doing this iterative process of, roll out a piece, fix what's broken, roll out the next piece. I mean, it can be done. I do think, you kind of have to get away maybe from some of the old providers in some way to do that. get that mindset, but I really think it's just a mindset of let's move quick. No, we can't get the whole thing out at one time, but let's get a piece out that'll move the needle, quickly.
Oh, it's super. As you said, that mindset, once you adopt it, I shared this when we were in Chicago that, I've been in the software industry for 25 years and I haven't been involved in a waterfall type of project, which does presume, upfront all the answers for well over 20 years. It's been agile, which is iterative and much smaller, faster rollouts for the last 20 plus years. And it's great to see that, progressive bankers like you are really starting to adopt that. And it's not just about software. It's a way to run a business in a very
right.
iterative process as well.
Yeah, we try to think about it not just in terms of like how do we roll out some new big thing, but how can we do that, internally. And I think our old way of thinking was like make a list of all the things that are broken, and when it's time to fix stuff, we'll go fix all that stuff. And instead having the mindset of, hey, what can we fix now? Yeah. Even in just processes, right? Like nothing to do with software, but just how can we make a process better?
Oh, it's so good. Well, second thing, you talk about infrastructure and that you have really started to invest in a new type of infrastructure. Can you share a little bit more there? Because I think that goes a long way. I could tell from your answer that it's just giving you this sense of confidence that you're going to be able to do a lot of things with that as well.
Yeah. So what we decided is that we needed to have our ownership of our data. And we needed to have better control over how we interface with that, because so many of the providers, the fintechs out there have these great products, but you need to tap into that in some way. And so we're almost done building out kind of this middle API, middleware data layer, so that we can work with partners to tap into it that way, instead of going to our core provider to get access to the data. And I think what that's going to and that goes both ways. We can put stuff in and we can pull stuff out of our core system that way. And what I think that's going to allow us to do, it's going to allow us to do things quicker and less expensively, so that, part of this whole thing is trying stuff. I mean, we're going to launch some things that don't work out, and that's okay. I think in the past, what bankers, and I know I've been guilty of it, you spend so much money investing in something new, you realize somewhere along the way that it's not working, but you just keep pouring more after it because you've invested so much in it. And instead, what we want to do is we want to try stuff. And if it's not working, maybe we scrap that, or maybe we modify that. And if we have control over that and spend less on the front end, I think, we can feel better about scrapping a project that's not working and moving on to the next thing.
Oh, that's so productive. That portfolio approach, to your point, is, there's definitely a mentality in at least my world of, if you're not every once in a while failing, you're probably not trying enough things. And so I think that in controlled environments and controlled budgets is a much better way to move forward. So I'm very excited for you. Last thing I thought was really interesting in your comments when you mentioned things like Treasury Direct and the Apple savings account, which shows me that you're out looking at what others are doing and what else is out there. What has led you down that path of just being curious and seeing what else is happening in the world around you?
Yeah, I think as I talk to people and as I got involved, like with Bank Tech Ventures and other things we're involved in, and even like ICBA is doing a great job of this on the innovation side, and CBA, Community Bankers Association of Georgia, is part of ICBA, is doing that as well. Just kind of getting exposure to what's out there. I think, you got to have people in the bank trying stuff and see what other people are doing, some of those things we want to imitate. Some of those
Mhm.
things we want to try and say, hey, don't make it like that. That was a
Sure.
real burden, or that didn't work. And so I think it's really important to see what all is out there, because, we don't want to find that out by finding we lost a bunch of our customers to something, right?
Sure.
We want to know what all's out there and how we can build stuff better and make everything a better experience for our customer.
That's so helpful. I think there's a lot of value that people are going to take from that perspective. From where I sit, I am impressed because I don't think it's common that you have this really strong point of view around how important innovation and change, and you just talked about it, in improving the experience for your customers, for example, and really trying to be a leader there. What is it that got you to this place where you said, we need to be a leader in improving that experience for our customers?
Well, I've always been somebody that believes in, change. I have a good friend who always said at his bank, if somebody didn't like things, he always told them, just wait a minute, because it's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in that, but I think what through COVID and the lockdown, and I think you just had this faster adoption of digital by groups of people that were sort of forced to adopt it. And I think that people maybe don't recognize, but I think it's just creating this snowball effect, and it's going to change even more rapidly. I mean, everybody knows things always change, but I think the pace of change, the speed of change, it's really hit me. And I look at what's going on in the fintech landscape and just how people are evolving there. It's kind of like it's the biggest thing since, I think, the internet, just in terms of it's coming and it's going to change things rapidly, and you can either experience it and grapple onto it to propel you and to thrive. But I think at a minimum, you're going to have to adopt a certain amount just to survive. And so to me, you got to adopt some to survive. But for us, we want to thrive. How can we use it to make our company better, make our experience better? And I just see it as this, like, we've never had this kind of leverage, in the banking industry at our level. When you look at the bigger banks and how efficient they are leveraging their customer base. They are utilizing every potential way to do business with somebody. And as community banks, we're only capturing a fraction of that. And there's opportunity for us. We're trusted by our customers. We are good at hand holding our customers through things. And if we can adopt that, and leverage that technology like the bigger banks have, we can have the kind of efficiency and returns they have without the scale. And I think that's a huge opportunity.
Super interesting. Well, one of the topics that I find I discuss with bankers a lot is this topic of quote unquote community. And I think for a long time, community was generally a singular definition for most banks, which was the geography that they were in, or that their network of branches primarily served. And, as you think about Colony Bank and the digitalization of what's happened, has that caused you to rethink community and what that definition might expand to or change to within your bank?
Yeah, I think this is a big concept that community banks need to embrace. I think certainly for us, geography was always, just kind of how you thought about a community. But now I think that we're trying to morph that more into a community being a group of people who have a certain attribute or trying to accomplish a certain thing. Small business owners or niche businesses or whatever. I mean, even like we have a sizable mortgage business, and
Mm-hmm.
in that you have a constituency. It's home buyers. We get most of our business from referrals from realtors. So how can we help those groups? It's not necessarily even a product, right? It's okay. How can we educate this community, this group? How can we make the outcome they're seeking better? And by doing that, we grow this community. And so, and it's less geographic bound now, right? I mean, we don't have to be in a market, to serve that market. And so I think it opens up a humongous opportunity for us. And in thinking about that community, it also causes you to focus less on, I think, the product and more on the outcome. Like, for years, it's like we're in the mortgage business. It's about a mortgage loan. No, it's not. It's about a house. They don't want, our end user doesn't want a mortgage loan. They want a home.
That's right.
And so how do we help them get through that? And if you get really good at those, why tie yourself down to a geography? When whatever that is you're good at, you can open that up to a whole community that needs that service.
Sure. Well, he definitely, I get a good sense of your vision, but I'd love for you, how do you think about the future vision of your bank? And, that you talked about, pushing more to outcomes, pushing more to communities based on affinity or attributes. But as you think about where will Colony be 5-10 years from now in your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I get a lot, and one our team wants to know a lot.
Of
like,
course.
where are we going? How will we know when we got there? And I try to say we'll never know, because we'll never be there. It's about the journey, really. But the growth is really important. I just feel like we need to always be growing and expanding. If you're not, if you're not growing, you're dying. And when I say growth, I mean in terms of our team, our team members, our shareholders. All our constituencies need to benefit from the growth. It can't be weighted too much, from one to the other. But I don't look at it as we need to get to X size.
Sure.
I really look at it as we need to be doing more. We need to be providing more services for every customer. So the future really, we're in a lot of rural communities, and we like that. We want to stay, and that's our heritage. I grew up in a small town. We want to, but the future is that we're going to be serving those customers more. We're going to be doing more with them. We're going to be sort of the go-to place for them when they have a financial need or a major need in their life. We're going to be able to help them. And that's what I envision. It's not necessarily about being X more markets or being a certain size. It's really about how are we better serving the customers that we already have. And then it becomes exponential if you're able to do acquisitions or go into a new market, instead of getting just taken over the business that was had by the prior institution. You're able to take that and then expand it into this broader group of products and services. And so where that takes us exactly, I don't know in size, but what I hope it does is it makes us more efficient, and that we're better serving the set of customers that we have.
Do you feel like the infrastructure investment and sort of willingness to be a little earlier to adopt some things will give you a big advantage as you continue to both serve those customers, but also grow over time?
I do think it will. I've always been a believer in investing in infrastructure. I mean, in a regulated industry, it's so important, that you keep up with that growth. And so what I think we can see on top of that is, once we have that base and once we're able to add to it, just exponential growth. on top of that. And some of that are things that don't require as much capital. For example, we're in the merchant services business where it's not capital intensive, but it's costly to get going. But once, it's recurring revenue. And it's something that customers need and aren't happy with a lot of times their current merchant services provider. So I think for us, we're going to see this we've seen this expense, of building that, but we're going to see some exponential growth off of that as we really get better at marketing that and cross-selling our customer base.
How we talked about kind of this redefinition of community, and you talked about a lot of the rural communities that you historically have served. How closely are you following just economic and market trends in those geographies, and whether it's movement from cities to suburbs or rural to more urban communities? How closely are you following that to really determine where you want to be? Because I think that's another trend just in our country that's fascinating to follow.
It really is, and I stay very involved. I mean, last week I was at a rural development conference that the Georgia Chamber does. It's something we really watch because we're in a lot of communities. A lot of our communities have seen, population either declines or growth rates that are really, really slow. But what we've seen is a little bit of a revitalization go on. I mean, I think, again, back to through what COVID experience went through, we're seeing in a lot of our smaller markets this revival where people have seen that maybe the urban, lifestyle isn't as glamorous as it once was. And, so we're seeing some growth in pockets there. Certainly our markets that are near the coast have seen a lot of growth, and they are suburban markets already, but they're seeing more growth. So it's really interesting to see, and I think it's not done. I think we're going to see more of that. And so it's exciting to see, because in some of our smaller markets, it's kind of the first wave of revitalization that's happened maybe since the 80s or 90s. And so it's really exciting to see.
It almost feels like across the country, that's an opportunity for community banks to really play a leadership role in many cases.
Well, it absolutely is, because in most of these markets, you either don't have a lot of the national or regional banks, or, the national or regional bank presence in that market is just so small compared to what it was. But what's happened a lot of times is that regional or national bank market share is still pretty large, considering that they have such little presence there. And so that's for us, we've been able to grow in markets where our growth rates exceeded the market's growth rate, because you're seeing a lack of investment by some of the bigger banks in those markets. And that's true across the country. It's not just the markets we're in Georgia. It's all across the country. And so, I think we have the ability to have bankers feet on the ground in some of these markets, see what's going on, and a higher comfort level of stepping out there and making a loan, or connecting them with SBA or other, there's tons of rural resources that are out there, tax credits and all kinds of things, and connecting people to those so that they can fulfill whatever their dream is in some of this revitalization.
Super interesting. I'm excited to see and appreciate the leadership role you're playing there. But excited to see that happening. Coming from a small town as well, like I did, and I would love nothing more than to see that town really revitalize in the coming years. So let's turn a little bit to, I'll say, your peers. You know a lot of community banks within your state and across the country. I mean, we still have over 4,000 community banks in the U.S., but as you know, most, I would say, aren't keeping up. And there is this, as you even alluded to earlier, there's sort of this survival and relevance level. And then this, for those who really want to thrive in the years ahead, the opportunity, I think you and I both believe it is there. What is it, if you were to say the key things you think are holding certain banks or senior leaders of banks back? What is it that you see consistently that you think holds them back from not embracing this digital future?
Yeah, I think there's probably some level of thought out there that like what we're seeing is a fad, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, these things are going to come in and they're going to go away. So I think there's some of that. And I think there's some just complacency of, hey, look, if we give good service and we take care of our customers, then that's gonna take care of everything. And obviously that's very important. But
Mm-hmm.
I know like we've done some things to just like comb through our customer base and look and see like look through your transactions and see how many people are doing business with Square and Venmo and how many people are getting direct loans that you didn't even realize your quote unquote loyal small business customer. But when you realize that how easy things are and like, they can go, I mean, we got small business customers, they're really busy. We're open from what, 8 to 5. I mean, they're working and they need equipment. They can go online and get an equipment financed, in a day. And we're going to ask them for all these financials and all this stuff. And yeah, maybe we're going to give them a better rate, but they need to buy something right then, or they've got an opportunity to buy a piece of used equipment or buy something from a competitor who's shrinking while they're growing. The fact that it's at a higher rate is irrelevant. And so I think there's just it goes back to that concept we were talking about earlier. It's speed and efficiency. It's here to stay, and it's good service and good products. I just don't think are enough anymore to thrive. You've got to be or maybe I should say different. Good service may be defined really differently.
Yeah.
It's not hand holding them through a long 60-day process that's unnecessary. It's instead finding a better way to deliver it faster to them. And I just think it's here to stay. And this is even before kind of this AI revolution we're getting into. It comes into play.
Well, I think there's so much value in just even that comment on, hey, the bank is 8 to 5 and we'll give you great service from 8 to 5. But if the customer needs that service at 10 p.m. and they can get it from a chat bot online at 10 p.m., that feels like good service to them versus somebody else when they're in the mind of needing to do it. And I think just your recognition of that puts you at a huge advantage, because now you can start to design solutions for people that are going to do their banking at maybe what historically were off hours.
Right. No, and that's when, I mean, the best customers, the folks that are movers and shakers, I mean, they're busy, they're dealing with their customers during that meat of the day, right? Need to be able to serve them in different ways and at different times.
That's right. Well, one of the other things I hear often is just this almost paralysis that some banks or bankers have, where they say, I'm getting solicitations from just dozens and dozens of companies that all are promising me the world. Many of them sound the same, and it's just noisy. And you clearly have shown a successful ability to sift through and find the ones that are meaningful to you and Colony Bank. What do you feel like you're doing to do that successfully?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's also easy to get like shiny object syndrome or FOMO, and just, all of a sudden you're developing solutions to problems that you don't have, right? Because there is so much out there. I think involvement in like Bank Tech Ventures, trying to involve yourself in these communities where you have peers to talk to about things, you're vetting things as a group, you're getting multiple other people, involved is really big. I mean, one of the things we've tried to do is say, look, like we're not really interested in like this unsolicited, you know, uh, thing that comes in. We want to be out there discovering things, discovering multiple things, not just look for one solution. Let's get a competitive situation. Let's look at several products and services. Let's don't just find something and then say, oh, that's great, because you don't know what else is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we've hired, we have a chief innovation officer, and it's really part of his job is to just always be cultivating these things and bringing things up, hearing what the challenges are in the bank and bringing solutions. That's been extremely helpful, because I think, prior to this mindset at Colony and with me, we would fall into the, hey, our core provider has called us up with this new product they have, and isn't going to make great things better. And, we get it implemented only to find out, well, there were maybe some better ways we could have done that. So, I mean, that's what we're doing. I think, people, bankers should just immerse themselves in the stuff. There is no shortage of, industry events and what, like I said earlier, like ICBA is doing. There's a lot of ways to learn about stuff and get yourself familiar with what's out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I appreciate about you, you're just so open and real, Heath, which I think is such a great set of traits for a leader. Going back to, let's just talk about you for a bit. When did you first start to realize you were a leader?
Well, I tell you, that's a great question. And I even have a hard time, honestly, just thinking of myself as a leader. I mean, like,
sure. Which is, again, another attribute, that humility
well,
is endearing to a lot of people.
Well, I tell you, I mean, I think, maybe when I was at Heritage and I first kind of moved up to controller and CFO role, I think I started to realize, like, wow, there's a lot of responsibility here. It's got a lot of mouths to feed, families, team members, their families counting on, their loved one that works for the bank. And so it's a little bit overwhelming to realize the amount of responsibility you have. But I think really, as I look back, what I wish I'd realized a little sooner is that you're a leader sooner. Like, I tell our team, if you're a big brother, or a big sister, you're a leader, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody is looking up to you to see what you do. And so for me, it's really about how do we exhibit that? What can we do to help, bring our team members up? How do we demonstrate things? How do we communicate? I do a weekly leadership call with our team. I guess it's probably 80 or 90 leaders in the company, but we record that. They can ask questions live, but we record that. Anybody in the company can watch that later, so that they can develop as a leader. But somebody on my team, one of my people that helps me, put something at the top of my sheet I use to make my notes for that call. And it says, as a leader, setting the direction and keeping the team focused is your job. And that actually came from a book, The Founder and the Force Multiplier. And so I just try to always remember that, like, it's my job to set the direction and keep people focused. So that's how I think about leadership.
So good. Well, as you think about your own personal development, you just mentioned a book, any key things that you do to keep yourself on that growth and learning journey?
Yeah, I do read a lot. I mean,
okay.
As a kid, I did not. And I even, in the summers, I used to pay my sister to read my books for me and help me with my book reports for summer reading. but I've grown to really like to read, and so I'm constantly reading. Not only I read leadership books, but also read a lot of daily industry stuff, Wall Street
Mhm.
Journal, other things. I just want to know what's going on. I don't like being surprised with finding out something's going on that I heard about. That's really important. For several years now, I've had a coach. So I've
Mm.
got a coach that I meet with every 2 weeks. That has been just extremely helpful to work some ideas out and to
Mhm.
help me when I'm struggling or I'm having struggles with my team. And then, probably the biggest just hack of a tool is just get yourself in a routine. You don't have to do everything, but whatever you do, just do it consistently.
Mm.
And so I'm pretty disciplined about my daily and weekly routines in terms of really just how I go about my day, how I prioritize things, because you got to prioritize because you're never going to get the to-do list done.
That's right. Well, thank you for sharing all that. So much good stuff there. A couple final questions I'd love to delve into. First, what's one thing that most of your banker peers don't know about you?
Well, this is a really good one, and I like to work with my hands. I like to do things, so I like to build stuff. I'm a C level, like ABC, A being great,
Mhm.
C being okay, carpenter,
Hmm.
plumber, electrician. I can do a lot of those things with my hands, and I enjoy doing those kind of things, because you can kind of start and finish a project
Mhm.
and see the end result. So I love to build stuff. Whereas what we do at the bank every day, it's like this ongoing thing that
Mhm.
you never really step back from and say, I finished that. And so there's some sense of accomplishment that comes from, fixing a busted pipe or
Mhm.
running a new spotlight on the outside of your house or whatever it is.
Very cool. I guess we get a little window into a couple recent projects, it sounds like. So we talked about, the opportunity for community banks right now to go out and compete. I've had several. I'd be curious your perspective on this. I've had many of my friends who have businesses approach me recently and say, maybe I should consider doing business with a community bank. What's your answer when you hear from folks who maybe are working with a national regional bank today who say, why would I want to work with a community bank?
Yeah. Well, earlier in the conversation, we were talking about something, and it was like, you don't know what you don't know,
Mhm.
going out and seeing I mean, some people have been with some of these larger banks for so long. It's kind of like, the frog in the pot of water
Yep.
that doesn't realize it's boiling. It's just been, the temperature's turned up. So I just tell people, I'm like, you should try it. I try to get them to come do business with us, obviously, but I tell people all the time, like, if you want to do business with us, like, go try another community bank, because I think what you're going to see is it's just a totally different feeling, that you get, and having somebody that, all the great tools are awesome, the ease of doing business electronically and digitally, but it's also good to have somebody's cell phone number,
That's right.
that you can call and say, hey, I got a problem and I need help. And so I think that people don't realize the level of service they could get, and that people tend to underestimate how important they are. Well, my business is small. Well, it's important to us, and so I think they just need to go do business with a community bank and see what it's like.
Great perspective. Even my attitude is, even if it starts as a secondary relationship, and particularly over the last few months, I think people have awakened to, I probably need a second bank, particularly when some of the ones that we've had some challenges with or disappeared were not ones that were on people's radars as ones that were likely to go away.
Absolutely. I mean, had a recent experience where a former neighbor of mine who's a physician called me up and said, "Hey, Heath, I know you've been on me forever about doing business with y'all, and I haven't, but now I'm concerned because I need to spread my money out a little bit." And so I got him lined up, with one of our bankers. And several days later, I get this text from him. It's like, "Heath, I had no idea y'all made it so easy
Hmm.
on me. I'm busy. I always feel like I'm burdening people because I'm asking for this extra help because I'm so busy. But y'all made it easy for me." And that's what we try to do. And I think
Mhm.
that's just a great value of the community bank. And now we can leverage that with technology like we're talking about. It's the best of both worlds.
That's right. That's right. Well, last question, and unfortunately we're running up against time, but what a fun conversation as I knew we would have. What would you say is the thing you're most excited about as you think about the bank and the rest of 2023?
We talked earlier about being able to control and access our own data. And so this is
Mhm.
something we've been building. And so we're now finally first getting to our first few use cases to actually utilize that.
Mm.
And so I'm really excited about seeing how that works. How quickly are we able to do things? How will that help our adoption with things? What insights can we gain about our customers, and what kind of results can we get? So we're working through, our use cases there, and getting some of those lined up. And so that's probably the thing, that I'm most excited about. And it's great in this kind of environment as business has kind of slowed down in general and we're more internally focused. It's a great time to say, "Hey, we got this captive audience that's already doing business with us.
Mhm.
How can we help them better?"
Well, I have a feeling we're going to have to revisit some of that because I mean, it sounds like a new set of superpowers that you and your team are going to have that is going to give you such an opportunity to, as you said, better serve and probably come up with a lot of new solutions to retain and attract new customers as well. So super excited. Well, Heath, thank you so much for the conversation,
Absolutely.
for your leadership in this industry, and thank you also for the partnership at BankTech Ventures as well. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Operate Podcast. If you like this conversation, as a favor to me, you can rate us, review us, or subscribe, or tell your friends. You can also reach out to us on Twitter at Operate Podcast. Until next week, get out there and operate.